Hey guys, my name is Julian and welcome to the channel. Today guys, I'm gonna take you along because I'm going to remake this pedal board, or actually I'm gonna make a bigger pedal board because I want a few more pedals in my board, and I'll tell you why. But the main thing is that maybe for someone making a pedal board, maybe it's your first time, maybe your pedal board just doesn't work for some reason, right? And by that I mean, guys, that I see many non-functional pedal boards that are beautiful. So I go on Reddit and I'm like in a bunch of forums where people post their boards, and I see them and you're like, that board looks wonderful, but the thing is that it's actually not usable. The thing is that on stage, guys, when you're under pressure, you're thinking out the chords of a song, people are watching you. It's not the same thing as being at home. So if you don't have your pedal board set up in a way that is functional, you're gonna end up stepping on a bunch of pedals. You might end up, something not working correctly. So maybe your cable management, you think you can leave your cables lying around, and all of those things are very important, guys. So it's not only about making it look pretty, because we all want to make our pedal boards look as nice as possible, right? But it's about how they work. So I'm gonna take you along with the ride. I'll do a time lapse of me building this pedal board, but let me give you a few tips that I wish I had, because again, making a pedal board is just not putting pedals anywhere and that's it, right? And I will also show you in a second or in a minute a tool that I use online to build now my pedal boards before I have to do it manually, and I think that's very helpful. All right, so first let me show you what pedals I'm going to be putting on the new board. Now, by the way, this here is, well, not new because I had it before. I'm always making new pedal boards, making them smaller, making them bigger. So I have this bigger pedal board here. Already has the Velcro, right, and everything. But again, I'm like thinking, okay, there's a few pedals that I might want. So what I'm gonna do is that I want not to add a wah pedal, right? I'm also gonna change my HX Stomp XL for the normal HX Stomp, right? Just to save space, and also because I don't need the 6 buttons. I actually do not need it. With 3 or 4, which is what I'll do with the Stomp, I'll be fine. I also want to add, well, you know what? Let me show you what I'm going to add. So here is the wah pedal that I'm going to use. It's like a mini Hoyo wah pedal. Works great. Works great. It's small, right? I might get like a full-on wah pedal maybe in the future. I had before, but I don't know. So this is going on the board, so wouldn't fit in here, right? I'm also adding the Boss Blues Breaker because I love this pedal, guys. And as you can see, I have many drives on my board, right? My board is full of drives. You would think, why would you need another drive pedal if you have an HX Stomp? And to be honest, guys, I just don't like how the pedals sound on the HX Stomp. I think the effects, all of them, aside the drives, they sound really good, but drive-wise, and again, I am a big pedal guy, so it just has never satisfied me. So, we'll get our Blues Breaker mainly for when I use single coils. This is like my fatten up your guitar single coil, right? I'm going to add here the Lion or a UAFX. I have a few of them, but the Lion just as my backup. I always use an amp. I'm an amp guy, but in case something happens, I do want to have a backup ready. And I love, especially a Lion 60. It might be my favorite out of the bunch. All right, I'm gonna add a compressor pedal. Again, I had this pedal for years, and I actually love the way this pedal sounds. So instead of using the one in here, which are good, it's not that they're bad, I actually really love how this compressor sounds. So I'm gonna put that on. It's a big pedal. Now, obviously, here is the smaller HX Stomp, so just so you can see a size comparison, right? So it is almost twice as long, so it does take a lot of space, right? And that's why I'm going to be changing it for this one, because to fit everything on the bigger board, I still need to make this smaller. So I'll have this, but added to that, I have this controller next to it. Now it is small, so it is going to make it a little bit bigger, but not as big as this one, right? And again, it has, with these 2 extra buttons, that's all I need in reality as far as my pedal board. All right, guys, and so besides that, before I show you that tool that I use online, that anybody can use it, by the way, let me tell you a little bit about the tools you're gonna need. So as far as cable management, right, I use these things. I don't even know what they're called. They're like Velcro wraps, maybe. And guys, this has saved my life. I used to use tie wraps, and then anytime I made a change, I would have to cut the tie wrap, put a new one, change whatever. With these things, it can just reuse them. So let me show you the back of my board. All right, so check it out. Here it is. I have like a normal power strip supply here. Here's the power for my pedals. I do have over here uh, one of those T-pon cables, whatever, because I do want that to be held pretty tight just in case. But as you can see for my cable management, guys, I think these little things work great. And now I put Velcro on the back of my board, and that has helped me, to just be able to, if I want to change a pedal, I want to change a cable for any reason, something goes wrong, I can easily just, take it off, put it, and then put it back on. And that way, I just feel that it's a lot easier and functional again. For me, a lot of the things about pedal boards and stuff is about how do they function, right? How well do they function? Right, guys, so we're gonna use that. Most of my cables are going to be this. I don't even know what the brand is, guys. I have no idea, but they're about 6 inches. You just get them. I got them on Amazon. They come like in a batch of like 6 or even 12, and they work great. And they're pretty flat, and that, I think that does make it easier to manage your cables. And they also have what we call a flat head, so they don't have like a head, so that gives me a little bit more space to put my pedals around. Even though the idea is not to stack in like super close together, right? Now, before now we get to that, right? And then again, to this video will just be a time lapse of me making my new board, and then at the end I'll show you the final product. But this is the main thing, guys, about pedals, that maybe, again, if you're building a new pedal board, if you're trying to build something, or maybe you have a pedal board that is really nice, you never gig with it, and you're wondering, if it's gonna work or how you can make it better. And guys, it has a lot to do with height. All right, so let me give you an example. Actually, let's see over here. So for example, check it out. This Boss Blues Breaker pedal, as you can see, it gets pretty high, right? So let's say that if I want to put my compressor right after it on my pedal board, we get this. And what's gonna happen, guys, is that this is almost impossible to press. All right, you're gonna struggle a lot trying to press this pedal if it's on the back of this pedal, right? So the main idea for building my board, and I'll show you because I did kind of make a few ideas on this program where you can kind of make your pedal board virtually, right? The main idea is that I'm always trying to figure out what pedals do I use the least, and those are going to go on the back, but also height wise, which ones are higher, where can I put them, so that I know that I'm not struggling to press a pedal and then by accident I press the knobs, turn the knobs on another pedal I didn't want to, or press two or more pedals at the same time, which has happened to me before. So all of these things, guys, are important to know. All of these are things you want to take into account. And then yeah, and then important things. So I'll try to give you more tips at the end, just in case. By the way, your pedal board doesn't, so maybe people are gonna, maybe like the purists might kill me and or kill me or like hate on me, but I don't think you need like a super expensive power supply, guys. I use this power supply, which was like $50, right? And it has worked perfectly. And I bought another one as a backup, right? But I see some power supplies that are very expensive, and I don't have a problem with noise. Has never had a problem with it. Also, as far as like where to plug everything into, I just bought like this power strip, this black one, guys. This is just like the power strip that you get for anything. And that's where I connect my HX thumb, that's where I connect this, and then this just has a long cable that that I'll take with me. And then I do have another extension just in case, but I don't know, I just think that makes it easier than getting maybe like a super expensive power supply. And then yeah, and then so let's just kind of see what happens. So let me show you that program. Let me show you the options that I have for my pedal board, and then we'll get going to actually making the board. All right, but let's check it out. All right, guys, so before we make the board, I want to show you what I'm using now, because it really lets me kind of like do a whole layout and see maybe what works and what doesn't. So this is kind of like my final board. This is the one that I'm gonna use to build my board. Now usually some things are a little bit off, like we need to think out the inputs and outputs of the pedals and stuff like that, but overall I think it works. So by the way, this is called Pedal Playground. Just go to pedalplayground.com. No, I'm not affiliated with them, but I don't know, I just found this, I guess, on a search engine someday. And I started using it, so it's free. You can save your different boards. And if all you need to do is here at the left, you can just put the size of your pedal board. And then if you need to add a pedal, right, let's say that we put, Arias, right, just as an example, let's say, the TSOA, right, and they give you like all of the mods and the different ones, right? Let's say the 40th anniversary one, right? Check it out. Oh, that's a very cool one. And it brings it out. It has most pedals. Some they do not. For example, here on my pedal board, you're gonna see that there's an empty space. That's because the controller is not part of this. Like they don't have it in their database. So pretty much, I just left the space in there. But this is what my whole pedal board is gonna hopefully look like. Now, let me show you some other ones, just again to give you some perspective of somebody that maybe gigs and has played a lot with pedal boards, just in case it can help you guys out because it makes a difference. So I'm gonna load some of the other ones that I try to build, right? And we can kind of see why they work or wouldn't work. So for example, check this one out, guys. This one looks really nice. I think visually looks very cool. But a few things on the pedals over here, their buttons are too close together. So if I'm going to press the rat, I might by accident also press the send pedal. I mean the send drive. Or if I'm going to maybe hit the blues driver, I might also press on the boss SD1, or with the rat too, because that one is around the same height. So those things do matter. So this pedal board, even though it looks nice, it's not really that functional. All right, let's take a look at another one. Let's see what else we got here. Check it out. This one was also kind of a cool one. All right, this one doesn't really have anything major bad, except that some of the pedals that I use a lot, for example, the rat, is all the way back there. Now, obviously, that's not gonna make the worst thing ever, but at least for me, I find that the pedals that I use the most, I want it at the front. For example, the super drive is in a perfect spot, right? Because I do use that one a lot. I'm turning it on and off with other pedals, pretty much all the time. Yeah, so this one is perfect. But for example, the Novos that I also use a lot is all the way back there too. So it's not that it's bad, but I just noticed that, at least for me, I just prefer having what I use the most at the front and the ones that I use the least at the back, which is pretty much what the pedal board that I'm gonna build. Actually, in this one, I'm planning on doing it this way. I think it would be better because I don't want that rat to maybe get in the way of buttons 1 and 2 from the Exosome, which again I do use a lot, right? So on this layout, what works is that I have a lot of the drives that I use are in front of me. For example, send drive for solos, how you use it for high gainer, and also solos depending on the song. The blues driver, boss SD, one of those I use a lot. And then I also have the rat and the novels pretty close too. So everything is like kind of like there, easy to reach. And the ones that I don't use the most, like the bar tone press, if I need it for a song, that'll probably be in for the whole song. Blues breaker, if I'm using a Strat or a Telly, right, I'm gonna probably be using that most of the time on, right, as I use it, so I don't need to turn it on and off. And the lion, the same thing. If I'm gonna go direct, I don't need to have this in front of me to turn things on and off. I'll just turn that on, I'll stay on. So those are in the back. So this layout, we'll check, of course. I have to make the actual pedal board in real life and see how things really work. But at least from the thinking and experience, I think it's gonna work. So let's go ahead and build it and let's see what happens. right, guys. So that was quite a lot of work, actually. Yeah. I got to a point when I was doing all of the power cabling that I was just asking myself why I would do this to myself. Right, but hey, the outcome is actually pretty good. Now the board, guys, is a lot heavier. Obviously, we have the Marshall is a heavy pedal. The UAFX is a heavy pedal, right? I mean, we did take away the long HFX, HX, I mean, Stomp XL, but still, on the board itself is actually heavier. Now, I do like this board, and the reason why I stopped using it was probably because it was a little bit heavy, but then again, I'm always changing, so I'll probably do a video in a few months saying that I'm going to downsize into my smaller board again. But the whole plan is actually for the other board, I'll make a smaller, a lot simpler board with less things for like ensembles, just with like the chord things. Right now, before I tell you about some of the details, some of the things that I run into, is it necessary to have all of these pedals? And in reality, it's not, guys. It's not. But to be honest, each one of these pedals does something a little bit different. And I'm pretty big on stacking and kind of using, I think of effect pedals as kind of like EQ curves in a way. So if I want more mids, I'll go for a certain pedal. If I want more fatness, I'll go for a certain pedal. If I want like a little bit of a more push on the highs, I'll go to a certain pedal, guys. So the funny thing is that, for example, and I have done this with my girlfriend, I'll ask her, I'll play like a bunch of different drives, and I'll ask her like, which one did you like more? And she'll say they all sounded exactly the same, right? So we will think then, what's the point? Well, the point, guys, is that for me, it's important, and it actually inspires me. So every pedal and every guitar and every amp that I have, they inspire me to do something different in a different way. So the whole idea of having all of these pedals is not just because I like pedals and I think they're cool, but it's because when I'm playing, I actually get really inspired by, different things. And I know when I'm trying to get a certain sound, I might just need a little bit of something that a pedal can give me, and that will just, make me flow a lot better when I'm playing, or even for recording. Obviously, I use this board a lot for recording too. You guys see it a lot of times in the video. So just having a lot of different options, for me, it's a great tool, and it is important to me, right? So, because there's always going to be that one person say, oh, you don't need all those drives. Right, now let's see what are some of the things that we run to in the front, right? So in the front, guys, overall, it went pretty well. All right, over here we have, some nice spacing between the volume pedal and the wah. All right, that was very important that they were not too close together because I don't want to step on them at the same time, right? Now, the one thing was, is with the rat. Now, where is it? It's right here. The rat is pretty high, so let me see if I can show it to you here. Okay, so it is as high as the H Stomp, so it is higher than the Boss pedals. That is like a small in the size, from area that it covers, but it's a pretty high pedal. Now that one, I actually liked it in that place because these two switches over here, one is for the tempo, so it won't really do anything if I press it by accident, and this is just to go into my HSL into like, scene switching kind of thing, but it's actually not gonna switch this in, it's just gonna get me in that mode. So it's not gonna be a big deal if I step on that either. So that's fine. This one over here on the back works perfectly because it's just like my on all the time for when I use like a Taylor Strat. It just flattens up the tone. All right, and then the other thing, guys, is with the Boss pedals. As you can see in the in the program, right? I wanted all of them straight, but because they have the outs and ins in the same place, they will hit each other, making a lot more space in between them. So to get away from that, I just had to put the middle one a little bit higher so I could put them together. And with those, I never have any problem just pressing one because they have kind of like a big switch, which I like about Boss. Besides, I think their Boss has awesome pedals. Right, so now let me give you kind of like the rundown of what the order of the pedal is, and then we'll look at the back, which is for me, that was the hardest part. That was what took me the longest. Okay, actually putting the pedals down wasn't, didn't take that long. All right, so we have, so we start by going into the wah. Wah goes into the compressor. Compressor goes into the fuzz, and then the fuzz start going into my different stages of drive. Right now, why am I putting the fuzz first if it's a digital fuzz? By the way, it sounds great. I'm not a huge fuzz guy. For me, it was actually awesome. Because that one, I use it all the time with different gain stages. And it actually gives me quite different sounds by pushing those pedals, right? If I do it the other way around, it just doesn't sound as good, at least to me. Right, so after the fuzz, we go into, the blues breaker, right? Then we go into the super overdrive. Super overdrive goes into the nobles. Nobles goes to the blues driver, right? Which that one is kind of like my fatness push if I need more fat for like a lead, for example. Or maybe I'm just doing like a riff that just needs to be fat enough, but not like with more meats, right? Then that's the one that I would go for, right? Then we go into the rat. The rat goes into whole using, and then the last one is the sand drive. And it's because with that one, I will use it like a lead, but a lot of times I want that tone to be the overall kind of like covering tone of other pedals that I'm stacking. Now I do a lot of stacking, by the way, and different combinations will give you very different things. Again, to my ear, right? But that is pretty much the layout, guys. So I'm pretty happy. It is heavier, so that's the only thing that kind of sucks. Is it twice as heavy? Not twice as heavy, but maybe getting close to actually that. So it is pretty heavy on the board, as I said, it's pretty heavy. That's the only downside, really. But I actually like how it looks. By the way, after that, we go into volume, and then volume goes into this one. Now, I have two safety nets, right? If my amp starts working, then I have this one over here. But let's say that my pedals start working. Let's say that my, well, one of my power outlets start working, and then, all my pedals shut off. Then actually the HX thumb, that's my last resort, even though I don't like it as much as the line. But with this one, I can run all type of effects, and I do have some presets saved in there. So I'll have effects, I'll have, drives, and I'll have amps just in here by itself. So if something happens, then I'll just, put the input right here from the guitar, and then this will then do everything. And it will do it pretty good again. Not as good as, this other stuff, but it will get me through the, through the gig if it happens. All right, now let's look at the other side, because that was painful, guys. So let's switch this thing around. Let's grab here. By the way, here is my power cable. It's kind of long, but I still take an extension always, just in case I might need it. All right, now here are some important things to take into account, guys. All right, first of all right, those little wrap things that you see all over the place, guys, those are lifesavers. Let me see if I'm getting that into the light a little bit better. Right, so those little wraps, right, they make a huge difference, guys. All right, so again, if I need to change something, I just need to take that off, and then I'll put it back on and do whatever change I need. Now, the tricky part over here was not so much the patch cables, was the wiring, guys. So something to take into account. Most power supplies will have at least 6 to 7 pedals, but I have more than that. So I actually had a spare power supply. So I have 2 power supplies. I have the adapter that goes for the HX thumb. That's another different power supply. And then I have also a separate power supply for the Lion. All right, so the powering was a big headache, actually. It was a big headache because it's a lot of cables. Now, here's what really saved me, or saved the day at least. Over here, guys, and let me see. Let me get this light a little bit more forward, guys. There we go. And I'll try to zoom it in a little bit when I edit this, right? And overall, it looks pretty clean for all the cabling. I think it looks pretty good. This board is pretty high too, and I like that, so it feels like my cables are like nice and protected. Right now, over here, guys, this power strip, there we go, this one here, this thing is a lifesaver. The reason why is because it has outputs on the side, both sides, and on the top, right? So what I did is that at the sides, I put the adapters that could be plugged in sideways, like this one over here, for example, right? There's other ones that will go the other way, so I couldn't use that. Now, sadly, for the HX thumb power supply, that one is the ones that I couldn't do it this way, would be the other way. So what I had to do, guys, and this is very helpful, by the way, is if you get one of these adapters, right? What it is, it's just a simple adapter, but